So, in this episode of So Mom Pod, we're diving into trends and philosophies in education, the big ideas that have shaped how we teach and parent over the decades. From multiple intelligences in the 90s to Genius Hour in the 2010s, we're looking at what stuck, what flopped, and what actually helps kids thrive. Plus, we'll explore some timely parenting frameworks today. The Anxious Generation by Jonathan Haidt, Mel Robbins' Let Them philosophy, and Lighthouse Parenting by Dr. Kenneth Ginsburg.
And of course, we'll wrap up with our book recommendations of the week. So let's get into it. All right, Mom, what did we do this week?
Well,
we binged White Lotus.
We well, binging is 2 episodes.
Okay, but it was a lot for us.
It was a lot. We didn't even do it at the same time, but it's so good.
I know. I'm enjoying it.
So what did you do?
What did I do? I'm writing. I'm working on a new novel.
Mm-hmm.
And passed in the last novel, working on the new novel. So I went to Mudwater. I've never heard of this place. A friend recommended it. It's kind of a gathering space for writers writing. And it's a no caffeine zone. So you have to sort of park your jittery energy at the door. And they had tables and chairs, but I opted into the great big floating pillows, like the caterpillar from Alice in Wonderland. And I just sat cross-legged with my laptop and my bizarre mushroom drink that was actually pretty delicious, and let the atmosphere take me into a different creative space. It was fun.
It's hard to imagine you without your 10 lattes lined up.
I know. And I sometimes feel like my jittery caffeinated energy is helpful to me and everyone around me, but it was different. I liked it. I'll go back.
Oh, good. Good.
What'd you do?
Well, I decided to recommit to reading long-form journalism because I'm so tired of getting clicks on my phone and trying to get me to read something or give money or whatever. So I just shut it down and have been reading magazines and articles. And then today I read one on sentient cells that are capable of experiencing sensations, awareness, and even emotions. And these are living beyond what we think of as life and then death. And so it's sort of upending the whole idea of us experiencing what we think we're going to experience, which is that these cells have a form of consciousness or a subjective experience.
From a person?
Yes. Yes.
That's weird.
It's so weird that I was trying to, my big imagination got carried away.
All little cells with your face on them?
I was imagining little cells with my face crawling all over, and trying to avoid people stepping on my cells. So I decided to take a little break, and I don't know why. I didn't go on TikTok, but TikTok came up, and it was a grandfather with big headphones singing Pink Pony Club. And I thought, that's what I needed.
That's what you need.
It was so funny and delicious because he actually had a good voice.
There's a toddler in my life who is singing Pink Pony Club now, and so his mom sends videos of that.
I know that
really good
toddler.
Really,
you tell
really
her,
good.
Tell his mom I need one.
I know, love it. All right, what are we talking about today?
So we're talking about trends in research in terms of parenting and education. And if you've been in education as long as I have, you know that it runs on trends. And every few years, a shiny new game changer shows up and takes over, promising to fix everything.
And you've, been in the room where it happens for a lot of this. You've been in education for so long and have seen so many things come and go. Take me on a quick trip of education's greatest hits of the past 8 decades. How long have you been?
close, a bit way too close.
Take me through education from 1870 through today.
You know, the saddest thing is before technology, you could have gone into a classroom. Rip Van Winkle could have gone into a classroom 100 years after he fell asleep, and it wouldn't have changed that much.
Oh, that's interesting.
But technology has really, really made a difference. And
so sort of from the 90s?
Yeah, so the 90s, I can remember everyone was talking about multiple intelligences. And some educators were saying, I don't even believe in.
Wait, what's that?
Well, it's a way that we all access our best way of learning. So you have people who are kinesthetic learners.
Oh,
which
or like
means
audio
audio learners, visual learners. And it was so simplistic that I think that the problem was we weren't sure what we were trying to fix.
I was a rote learner. I was like a memorizer.
You were. And I had a real problem with hearing things. I couldn't, if I had a French dictation, it was just Charlie Brown's teacher. I had no idea, except there was an accent involved.
Yeah.
But I know that I'm a visual learner, and so give me a book, give me something to read. That's the way I access. So I had difficulty when all education was through auditory, and that's the lecture style. So good things came of it. And then in 2000, I remember the whole birth of the flipped classroom. So
what's a flipped classroom?
The flipped classroom is when students don't do actual homework. They go and listen to the lesson that the teacher gives them. So she or he is not wasting time in class just giving this lesson. So students are autonomous. They watch the clip, and then they go into class and discuss what they have learned. So in theory, it's great. And you have teachers who really embraced it and did pretty well. But the truth is, you can't control what kids are doing at home. And so it was hard for them.
If somebody gave me an hour to go watch a YouTube video as my homework, I would have just not done that.
No, you wouldn't have. And that's why it failed. There were too many of you in that. And then in the 2010s, I remember the Genius Hour. Give your kids 1 hour a week to explore their passion, and they'll become the next Steve Jobs. Well, we all know that doesn't work.
No. If you love playing violin, just give limitless time for violin. Or
well, at least have an hour for a student to explore in the classroom.
Okay.
I would have just written notes to my friend.
Yeah, that's like called free hour to me.
Yeah, that's called nap. And then in the 2020s, and I'm not making light of any of this, because the problem is, if you go in with a mindset of fixing things, it's going to fail.
Mm-hmm.
But if you take all of these trends or thoughts or whatever it is, research, and you adapt it, you take the best of what it offers. So 2020 was social emotional learning. And that's gotten a bad rap from some people. But in theory, it's the process of helping kids develop basically the essential skills of self-awareness, emotional regulation, empathy, and decision-making. That's all great. Sometimes it felt didactic to kids. I heard that, we're going to do emotional learning today.
Yeah.
And I think so much of it is the way it's presented, and of course, modeling it. If I'm saying emotional learning is important, or creating stronger relationships, and then I'm flipping out and yelling at kids, that's not great practice.
Right.
So a lot of it got sort of watered down into corporate buzzwords. But SEL at its best is teaching kids how to navigate life, not just school.
So some of these thoughts had more staying power than others. Some trends kind of just like burned off.
Mm-hmm.
But in your opinion, kind of with the idea that nothing is a fix-all, what do
Right.
you think works?
Well, I think we have research that talks about this generation as being the anxious generation. And I think that there's truth in that. I have certainly seen it. But nothing's perfect. Less is more sometimes, and we have to think of this as tools in our toolkit, not making blanket statements about all kids are anxious. But if kids are anxious, let's think about why. And one of the books that has some staying power is The Anxious Generation by Jonathan Haidt. And it really explores the rise of anxiety and also what's happening with social pressures and social media. So he breaks it down into several good points.
I have not read this book, but I
Okay.
have listened to a lot of podcasts about this book and a lot of people's takes on this book enough to know that he talks about the impact of smartphones and social media. And so, but can you talk a little bit more about it?
Yeah.
Because I know you have read this book.
Yeah. Um, I think the whole idea of smartphones, and it's so easy to take one aspect and vilify it. And to say, because we've seen a significant increase in mental health issues and higher anxiety and depression and self-harm, uh, and certainly social relationships on social media are complicated. And we've seen kids who have their noses buried in their smartphones. Is that great 24/7? No. And we are seeing issues of sleep and the disruption of sleep and the disruption of normal social relationships. He argues that the widespread adoption of smartphones and social media has led to these mental health issues. And I think he's done the research, and there is some truth in it. But I've been around kids a lot, and when I talk to them about it and ask them about it, yes, they point out they're very savvy about the complications of it, what they try and do. They also will talk about the addiction of their devices. And this isn't a student issue. This isn't a child issue. Many people are addicted to their smartphones, and because it's easy access. But on the other hand, kids have access to so much information. And I noticed that with students. I noticed it with your children. What the level of things that they're able to talk about, the interesting takes.
Yeah, I would also say it's not as though my children were on one island addicted to their smartphones and I was on another island finding out about how these addictions were going to negatively impact them. My children are also really aware of not wanting to become addicted to things. They're
Yes.
really aware of like, let's put down the phone. This now I've got to put down my phone because now we're going on a walk or I want to skateboard or we want to have dinner or a friend is over. I'd rather talk to, real people. I mean, I think that there's a level of, because it's so pervasive in the conversation now, they want to be part of this conversation and not be sort of in this space where they're being duped by the addiction. They
That's
want to
right.
be smart and savvy about it too. They want to have mental health
Yeah.
and community around problem solving for, how addictive these devices are.
And I remember talking to your older son. He's also doing things that are interesting. He's animating, and he's working on his laptop in ways that I would have been under my covers with a flashlight.
Yeah. Yeah, it's all
You know?
furthering his passion.
And the thing is, kids are so smart technologically. So we say, we're going to ban this, or we're going to have a firewall. Do you know how fast they can bridge that firewall? And it shows a certain ingenuity. I was talking to a friend who is an educator, and he said, I taught coding. Now you don't have to, you don't
Right.
have to teach
Right.
coding anymore. Kids don't have to know that. So I think with all of this, if we engage rather than as adults and just make decisions or decide on things, if we actually engage kids in the conversation and you know, and as parents try not to with our youngest children just use iPads to, babysit, but if we're more intentional about it and think about it, they grow up respecting it.
Yeah. So moving from this book to the Mel Robbins
Yeah.
Let Them movement, I've been listening to a lot of her philosophy, which I think is simple but a powerful mindset shift that helps people stop wasting energy controlling others and kind of more of a refocus on your own happiness.
You can't control other people's actions, choices, or opinions. And, when you do, you just end up being frustrated with them. They can't do what you want them to do. They can't be who you want them to be. And rather than waste time, let them be who they are. They'll show you who they are.
Right.
And it saves it's so liberating to be able to do that, even with work colleagues. When I inherited this from your grandmother. I am very timely, and so I was always irritated when people came to meetings late, and I would say things like, please, let's be on time, and the late people weren't. And then I would feel angry. And then I thought, they're showing me something and I'm just going to let it go.
Yeah.
And it was so liberating.
It's that detachment from outcomes. And I was thinking about that because my younger is doing all these climbing competitions, and the person in me that really believes in training and rehearsal and, marking off time until the big event by proving to yourself somehow that you're going to be the best you can be is not his philosophy at all. His philosophy is, I love this thing. However I feel about it this week is going to impact the competition wherever I am in it. So I have to detach from how he is as an athlete. Also, I don't understand climbing, so I shouldn't even be anywhere near how he's thinking about it. It's like, this is really not my space. Yeah. But because I'm his parent, my tendency to want to get in there and parent it up, I think is probably in this case not what he needs.
Well, it's good to know, because I think of how many times we've talked to him and said, how did you do?
Yeah.
And now I'm never going to do that again.
It's a very freedom and peace kind of a feeling, because letting go of the control and the expectations gives me emotional freedom. I stop taking things personally and just, as the parent of this climber, and that's not my identity. And then I can just stop bugging him, which I hope I'm doing, but I'm probably bugging him a million different ways, passive aggressively.
Yeah, you don't have to worry about
I know.
that.
He's bugged. Moving on to The Emotional Lives of Teenagers, a book you love, by Lisa Damour. This book explores the intense emotions that adolescents experience and how parents can support them without overreacting or shutting them down. The book offers practical advice on emotional regulation, social dynamics, and balancing independence with support, helping parents distinguish between typical teenage struggles and signs of deeper distress. Damour's approach is all about teaching resistance while maintaining a strong, open connection with your teen. Okay, so what are your thoughts on this book?
First of all, I have to say I love Dr. Lisa Damour. She is so down to earth, so practical. And so much of her research is also based on her qualitative view of being around kids and talking to them and listening to them, as well as she's a really good researcher. So her books are excellent. One of her points in one of her books, which I loved, was about using a swimming pool or a swimming child as a metaphor. When you're in the pool, you let them go, they come back to you. Let them go, learn to swim a little, and they come back. And her points are, basically understanding intense emotions. And she's saying, kids have intense emotions. All you have to do is walk through a school and you can see the highs, the lows. It's a valuable and important part of emotional development. I read once that little kids were listening to their parents talk on phone. This case was attorneys, I think, but they were listening to their parents talk on phones, angry at colleagues, and they took that into the classroom and started acting that way toward
weird.
their friends.
Huh.
So I can't stress enough the idea of how we model healthy coping strategies. And always being open for communication. You can't shut it down, no matter how much you want to. No matter how many times you want to say, I don't really want to hear that. You actually really do want to hear it. And it offers, help with teens in their situations like dealing with peer pressure. And you see that with yours. And just trying to help them foster resilience and self-assurance.
I remember coming home a couple of weeks ago, and my oldest had a few friends over, and they had watched some show, and they'd seen the finale, and they were so overwhelmed with emotions. They were all writhing on the floor like eels. And I said, what is happening here? And they're like, we're just feeling so many feelings about this show. And they were, like making all these dramatic gestures, but they were like writhing and rolling on the floor. And then my child said, what we should do now is bake a cake. And I thought that was really funny because I always bake cakes when I have big feelings. So they all proceeded to make this terrible cake just using emotional recipe that had nothing to do. Yeah, they were like, maybe this cake comes out this way. But it was really funny, and I don't know, I loved it. I thought it reminded me of myself. I felt like I was a big feelings
But
child.
You are a big feelings person. And what your big takeaway is that they felt comfortable doing that in your presence. They didn't feel judged. And they managed it in the way that you manage sometimes your big feelings, which is a very healthy, wonderful way of doing it. So you modeled something.
It was funny. They
took it away. I love that. And of course, there's always the difference with recognizing what's serious distress, and her books provide such good guidance on distinguishing behavior from deeper mental health issues and concerns.
Well, you were a big feelings teen. I was presuming, but do you feel that your mom understood that in you? I mean, kind of pre-parenting books in a way. I guess there were some parenting books, but what's Dr. Spock saying about?
I don't think my mother was too busy. But if I was a certain way, she'd call me Cassandra.
Yeah.
Or, she'd call me a name. I mean, and that was
she'd label it.
And she'd always label it. I survived it. They were, sort of like, could you take that drama somewhere else? I'm having a cocktail.
That's what I'm remembering.
Yeah.
That, she had.
There was no tolerance for drama.
No.
But it did not mean that there wasn't drama in our lives.
Right.
Mostly our friends were our psychologists. It worked out.
Yeah. Our last book is Lighthouse parenting. This is a term that was made popular by, is he a pediatrician?
I think so.
Yeah. Dr. Kenneth Ginsburg.
I believe so.
But Lighthouse parenting has been a big topic around parenting in my friend group. And the idea is that as a parent, you're a lighthouse. You're this guiding force that's not helicopter parenting. You're not hovering. You're not totally hands off. You're this solid, reliable, help your child navigate, I don't know, the waves of life, the oceans of relationships.
I love that as imagery. I really do. And I if if parents could really see themselves as lighthouses, it would be wonderful. I know Kenneth Ginsburg. He's spoken at schools in Philadelphia, and he has a wonderful way. If all of your friends who love the book could actually, and I'm extrapolating them for all parents, if they could really believe in being a lighthouse, it is a wonderful metaphor. It really is, because you're a beacon, and that's what you should be. And you should be a point to which your kids can sail. I'm not going to extend this metaphor, but they can sail toward you and sail away. And you're always the light. You return to the light. And if parents could stop micromanaging their kids' lives and just understand that their best role, and I hear it from students all the time. My mom was so great because she didn't judge me. She just listened to what I wanted. Or um, when you're anxious, you're not becoming more anxious because your child's anxious. You have to actually be the calm lighthouse.
Right. It's similar to the swimming metaphor. Okay. So at the core of it, it's built on three big ideas. So maybe we'll break them down. And the first is be a stable force. So what does that mean to you, be a stable force?
Well, I think more important than anything is kids need consistency. They need to know, no matter what happens, bad grades, friendships, dramas, big mistakes, you're always there. You're a constant presence. And also you're not overreacting. I can't tell you, Adele, how many parents have come in crying, sobbing because their kids didn't get into the college of their choice. That's taking that away. You have basically said, you've disappointed me, even though that's not the intention. But that's what kids are hearing. And you have decided to be more emotional than they are.
But I think I hear that point, and I also am thinking about anytime I am a storm in the house. I mean, it's not to say get rid of your emotions, don't be a person. But what I'm saying is when I am dysregulated in
Yeah.
my home, say I can't, even the dumbest thing, can't find my AirPods. I'm late to
Right.
something. And I start sort of being a dervish or
Right.
snapping or something that is making the house not feel good to be in. My kids shut down completely. Like that is just about coexisting in a house, but also existing with younger people who, in some ways, because they're not adults, they can't come at you like you're getting on my nerves.
Right.
Like
Right.
it is the strange dynamic of having young people in your house and then being dysregulated is sort of on you not to be a storm just at every whim, every time the wind blows wrong. Do you know what I'm saying?
I know exactly what you're saying, and I don't think adults are always aware of what this does to kids. And that's a lot for kids. So, yes, we have to, it's not that we're not going to feel frustrated, but sometimes I think it's a good thing to acknowledge it. The more autonomy your kids have, the more they have the ability to say, it makes me feel something when you do this.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's a great thing.
The second principle of lighthouse parenting is prepare, don't protect.
Right.
Which is sort of the instinct is to protect your child from pain.
If I'm taking away every obstacle you ever had, then you haven't learned the skills to adapt or how to manage. You just think somebody's going to come sweep up those obstacles, when in fact the obstacle is the thing. That's the most important lesson.
Yeah.
You want them there. It's so hard.
It's hard to say, how do you want to handle this, when the more obvious choice is, let me just fix this.
Yeah. But even if you're calling a teacher,
Yeah.
bring your child in. What are we going to say?
Yeah. The third principle is be a safe harbor.
I think being a safe harbor is the hardest and most gratifying part of parenting in a way. Because it doesn't mean that you're just the giving tree. You're just the lighthouse of great warmth
Right.
with your arms
The
out.
benign beacon.
Right. Because we all want to be safe. And that's what I've learned through experience, through therapy, through everything. Safety as a child is core. Your parents are the first people who either make you feel safe or make you feel anxious. And if you take anything away, it's the importance of making your children feel safe, even and to let them make mistakes and
Yeah.
let them fail. It's
Yeah.
hard.
Yeah. So if you're not a lighthouse yet, don't worry.
That's right.
Just start
Your
small.
light will glow at some
Take a breath
point.
and count to 10. And then I guess if you want to dive deeper, checking out Dr. Ginsburg's work on lighthouse parenting is probably a good one. Great advice.
I think it's good advice. Everything, as I say, everything is just a tool in your parenting tool belt. Nothing's a fix.
Yeah.
Nothing's a fix. And no matter how good a parent you are, and no matter how you're doing everything you think is right, and you've read every single book, and your child is just hard, that's going to happen.
Yeah.
And sometimes you just have to say, this child is so hard and I need to take a walk, or I need to
Take a
spend
walk.
time.
Yeah.
Take a walk or spend time myself, or I can't take this anymore. And you just separate yourself out for a while.
I think that's good. That's good advice, because we do have so much information. There's so much emphasis on like, how can I be an even better parent? There's always another book to read, and there's always another manual. And my grandmother did not have any of those manuals and thought, I'll raise 7 children and no one's going to tell me how. And that's one way to do it. Now we're in such a different space where it's like, oh, I have all of this information, all of these wise, sage people telling me how. And I feel sometimes like just
too much.
Yeah, it's too much. Right?
Sometimes less is more.
Yeah.
And you know something? My mother did have 7 people. She ran a school. She was a consummate professional. There were a lot of times she was busy and she worked at nights and she did things. And she wasn't there listening to every one of my problems. But here's the thing. I knew she loved me and she loved all my siblings. And that was enough. I grew up, I figured out my own problems. I figured out my own, and in a way, she was a lighthouse, because when I had my deepest issues or my biggest problems, I did go to her.
Yeah, that's true.
She was a lighthouse. Sometimes she turned the light out and I found myself on the shoals.
Okay, we're doing some book recommendations. Because I always like a little fiction. I'm recommending Tom Lake by Ann Patchett. I think this is a beautiful novel about a mother telling her daughters about her past, and in the process, they all begin to see her and themselves a little differently. It's a beautiful read about family and love and the way parenting shapes not just our children, but ourselves.
You know what I loved about that book? That whole other relationship she had.
Yeah.
It was fun. It's always fun to find out your parent has another life, isn't it?
That should be another podcast.
I know. My book is Chatter by Ethan Kross, and it's just good advice for anyone who has a racing mind. And I read it because that's what happens to me. I get into bed. I've done all my bed hygiene, and I lie down, and then my mind takes off. Adam Grant said it well, and he said it's about silencing your monkey mind. Now I have to think about my mind as a monkey, and that's going to keep me up.
I haven't read this book.
Yeah,
No.
It's good. It's short and helpful, but it's just how you're doing it through meditation too. It's redirecting our inner voices.
Yes, I do that Sam Harris app that I love.
Yeah, and that's really, it was before Sam Harris, so
yeah. We'd love to hear from you. How do you approach these parenting dilemmas? Send us your thoughts And don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss our next episode of So Mom. Thanks for listening.
Bye. See you next time.